Welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show, where trusted leaders bring biblical insights to important issues to help you stand for truth and effect godly change in our nation and in our world.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Truth and Liberty Show. So glad you're watching today. I wanted to mention before we get started that we have a new product offering, a new free product for you today. It's my booklet called Faith for America. Did you know that faith in God has always been at the center of not just American life, but at the great moments and the great events in American history? From the Pilgrims landing at Plymouth, Massachusetts, through the victory in World War II and the Reagan Revolution in the 1980s, God has always been at the center. And America has been through many crises, many testing moments in our short history as a nation. And it's incredible to view these incidents through the lens of faith, and you can see how the faith of our leaders, the faith of our people in America has been the conduit through which God's power has moved to deliver our country and to fulfill our destiny and calling as a nation. So go to our website at truthandlibertygtn.com and you can pick up a free copy of my booklet today. You know, at Truth and Liberty, we're about restoring America to its God-given purpose. We're about returning America back to God, about equipping the church specifically to stand up for truth in the 7 mountains of cultural influence in our nation. When you look at politics today, or at any time, it's tempting as a Christian sometimes to think, well, that's just politics, that's not God, that's not religion. But you know, in actuality, politics is a part of human life. It's a very important part. In fact, government is an ordinance of God. Government is instituted by God. And even in Romans chapter 13, God refers to the king and to the people under him as the ministers of God. So that being the case, we need to understand what's God's purpose for government and why is it there and what is it intended to do. We generally speaking, when it comes to politics and government, we have two kind of camps. You have the left and the right. Why they call them the left and why they call them the right goes back all the way to the French Revolution. We don't need to go into that today. But you've got liberals and progressives and Marxists on the left. And then you've got conservatives, Republicans on the right. Generally speaking, though, the mindset of the two different camps is very different. You see, on the left-hand side of the equation, people tend to think in terms of groups, group identity, group rights, group responsibility, group power, group oppression. That's right. Leftists always characterize people according to their groups, their demographics, because to the left, what they crave is power. They want the power to control the outcome. And to them, you have oppressors and the oppressed. Even Karl Marx taught about this, the bourgeois and the proletariat. It's time for the workers to unite and throw off the oppression of the capitalists, right? It's always pitting one group against another. In modern America, we have the poor against the rich. We have the black against the whites. Now we've got the LGBT and sexual perverts against the normal people who operate according to, natural design. I hate to say it that way, but isn't it the truth? And, one of the ways that you can understand, or let me put it this way, God's ways work and Satan's ways don't. The left's ways, the progressive, ungodly philosophies that are driving so much in American politics today, these are rooted in ungodly, unbiblical philosophies. And the truth of the matter is that the policies that come out of the left don't work. Their approach to government does not produce prosperity, does not produce safety, does not produce the conditions for economic growth or human happiness or flourishing. And one of the places we can look for this is in law enforcement. We can see that progressive policies and laws tend to cause more crime, allow more crime and more human suffering than laws that are rooted in biblical values and in common sense. And Colorado, where we are here at Truth and Liberty, is a fantastic case in point. Colorado became fantastic just for teaching purposes. What I mean by that, and over the last 10 to 15 years, Colorado has undergone a transformation. It has gone from being a reliably red state. Colorado was Republican controlled for about 70 years until 2004, 2008. In about 2004 and 2008, the left began to take over the Colorado legislature and eventually took over the governor's mansion and all statewide offices. In 2018, there was a trifecta. Every house, both houses of the legislature and every statewide office were taken over by the Democrats. And the majority of the congressional delegation are now held by Democrats. And the policies that they have adopted when it comes to every issue, but I want to focus in today on crime, have caused Colorado to become one of the most crime-ridden places in America. You might be shocked to hear that. Most people, when you think of crime, you're thinking of Chicago, Los Angeles, maybe New York, maybe Philadelphia, and these places. But guess what? All of those places are controlled by Democrats. And Colorado now is no different. That's right. The state of the Rocky Mountains, of wilderness, of beauty, of freedom, has now become one of the most crime-ridden places in America. The U.S. News and World Report publication produced a study on this and showed that Colorado is now the third most crime-ridden state in America. 5 in every 1,000 people in this state experience violent crime. 3 out of every 100 experience property crime. Property crime since 2019 is up 30% in this state. A few more statistics for you. In 2012, Colorado had 307 incidents of violent or property-related crimes per 100,000 people. We were 80 points below the national average, or 80 incidents per 100,000 below the national average. So Colorado was below the national average in crime in 2012. Now in 2024, after years of Democrat control, we now have 492 criminal incidents per 100,000 people, which is 112 incidents above the national average. A 30% increase in property-related crime from 2018 to 2022. You know, there's reasons for these things. It's the policies that have been enacted in this state, in Denver, by the state legislature and signed into law by our liberal progressive governor. This is the bottom line of the matter. Take, for example, illegal immigration. Now, Colorado is a sanctuary state. Now, the liberals are trying to back away from that and say, no, we're not sanctuary, but the truth of the matter is that they are. They have done everything they can to make Colorado as comfortable and welcoming a place for illegal aliens as possible. They've given illegal aliens driver's licenses. They've afforded them in-state tuition rates, even though they're not even American, much less lawful Colorado residents. They've provided every state benefit to them, including unemployment insurance, Medicaid, and many other benefits. Housing for illegal immigrants in Denver. They've passed laws prohibiting law enforcement in Colorado from detaining illegal immigrants and turning them over to ICE. They just passed a law in this last legislative session that said that Colorado law enforcement, you can't even share the identity of an illegal alien who has committed a crime and is now in your custody. You cannot, by law, share that with the federal immigration authorities, or you can be fined up to $50,000. Crazy stuff like that. And in addition to these things, Colorado has legalized marijuana. Everyone knows this. Colorado was one of the first states to do so. Well, how's that working out for us here in Colorado? Well, with marijuana comes other drugs. With marijuana comes criminal enterprises that make money off of marijuana and other drugs. These are called oftentimes gangs and cartels. And with gangs and cartels also come other forms of crime: property theft, car theft, sex trafficking, and other problems. Violent crime in addition. Colorado has also, with the liberals, have become aggressive when it comes to gun control, passing some of the most aggressive gun control laws in the country. Do these gun control laws make Coloradans safer, make us better able and equipped to defend ourselves against violent criminals? Or do they just empower the criminals? Because remember, violent criminals, they're not going to pay attention to permit laws, magazine limits, background checks. No, only the law-abiding citizens are going to do that. So you're incapacitating Coloradans from defending themselves and empowering the criminals to victimize people. Let's talk about immigration a little bit more. July 21st of 2024, as of that date, in the United States of America, there were nearly 650,000 criminal illegal aliens. Now, what I'm talking about, all illegal aliens are criminals because they violated our laws coming into this country illegally. But we're talking about illegals who have actually committed other crimes. 650,000 approximately were on ICE's non-detainer docket and were roaming this country free and clear, right? The communities throughout the United States. This included 15,000 people who had been convicted of murder, 20,000 who had been convicted of sex assault, 105,000 of just regular, ordinary, everyday assault, 126,000 traffic offenses, 16,820 weapons-related offenses, 3,372 kidnappers, and 3,971 people who were convicted of commercialized sexual offenses. The Joe Biden White House and administration, the Joe Biden DHS, their law enforcement had been directed to mass release illegal aliens whom they knew had criminal convictions into America with no repercussions, no restraining at all. And the liberals in Colorado and all over the country, declaring California, Colorado, all these other states to be sanctuary jurisdictions, they're more concerned about the rights, so-called, of illegal aliens than they are about law-abiding Americans. Did you know that 59% and taxpayers, 59% of illegal aliens use one or more American welfare programs? We spend $150 billion, the United States does, every year on welfare-related programs for illegal aliens. Government benefits to illegals cost an average of $1,150 for every single taxpayer annually. That's an astounding amount of money. For every child of illegal immigrants, it costs American taxpayers $8,776. There are nearly 6 million children of illegals in the United States. And all the left can do is talk about, oh, you've got this guy who was a Delaware resident who's shipped off to El Salvador. Oh, you've got due process. Listen, I believe in freedom. I believe in due process. We need to make sure that people are here illegally before we deport them. Right? I'm not against that. But the huge, massive problem that the left has created because of its power politics, its identity politics, its anti-American agenda is in an emergency stage, and something has to be done about it. I've invited to be a guest on the show today a local law enforcement officer here in Colorado, Sheriff Darren Weekly, who's the county sheriff of a county called Douglas County here in Colorado. It's not the largest county, it's not the smallest county, but it is right in the middle between Colorado Springs and Denver. It has a pretty large city called Castle Rock, and he deals with a great deal of traffic up and down Interstate 25 and has a great perspective on what it takes to keep Coloradans and American citizens safe. And he's going to be talking today, we're going to be talking about the increased crime rate that's happened in Colorado, how it's not an accident, how it can be traced directly to the pro-illegal immigrant policies, the pro-drug policies, the anti-law enforcement policies, and the anti-gun policies and everything else that are the favorite subjects of the left and the liberals and the unbiblical policies that are behind all of these things. Sheriff Sheriff Weekly, he was already, he knew at a young age that he wanted to be a police officer. His journey into law enforcement began in 1988 when, at the age of 16 years old, he joined the Cherry Hills Police Department as an explorer. He eventually went through the ACC Police Academy and was hired as a reserve officer at Cherry Hills when he turned 21. By 1993, Weekly was hired in the Douglas County Sheriff's Department and was assigned to an undercover narcotics operation. In his tenure in Douglas County Sheriff's Department, he's held just about every position that one could imagine, including a training officer, a canine handler, a SWAT operator, and a personal crimes detective. His work as a detective produced multiple major crime convictions, including homicide cases. His leadership skills shone, and he ascended through the ranks as a corporal, as a sergeant, as a lieutenant, and in 2010, captain. He led the professional standards division, so he knows what right and wrong is as a police officer, how to conduct himself, how officers ought to behave, and the standards they should abide by. And he won the Triple Crown Award from the Douglas County Sheriff's Office and from the National Sheriff's Association, a prestigious recognition that fewer than 100 in over 3,000 sheriff's offices nationwide have achieved. So it's my honor and privilege today to sit down with Sheriff Darren Weekly and discuss these issues. And I hope and believe that this discussion is going to be very enlightening for you today. We're going to take a short break now, share some important information, and I'll be right back with County Sheriff Darren Weekly. Are you passionate about standing for truth in the culture, but don't know how to get started? Well, Truth and Liberty, our mission is to educate, unify, and mobilize the body of Christ to stand for truth in the public square. And as part of our mission, we provide you with an amazing array of resources on our website. And our website has just been revamped, remodeled, and retooled to be user-friendly. And I'm so excited about it because I believe that there's nothing like it out there anywhere. I want to encourage you today to go to truthandliberty.net and check out the Resources Center and the Get Equipped Center. On our Resources Center, you will find hundreds of links, hundreds of videos, articles, blogs, even America's original founding documents can be found on Truth and Liberty's Resources Center. It's searchable by topic, preset topic, or you can put in a custom search to find exactly what you need and what you're interested in. In the Get Equipped section, we link you to tools created by our strategic partners, including Pray, Vote, and Engage tools. We culture impact teams, civic action teams, biblical citizenship in modern America, biblical worldview training, and more. So go today to truthandliberty.net and find what you need to get equipped to stand for truth in the public square. All right, welcome back to Truth and Liberty. Our guest today, as I mentioned, is Sheriff Darren Weekly. He's the sheriff of Douglas County, Colorado. Sheriff Weekly, I'm so glad to have you on Truth and Liberty today.
Thanks for having me.
Well, sir, let me just dive right in here. In my monologue today, I was sharing a little bit about what's happened in Colorado over the last 10 to 15 years. You know, Colorado has become a deep blue state. Some really radical progressive policies coming out of Denver, the state capital, our governor's office and everything. But if we look at the crime stats in our state, it's not a pretty picture. From your perspective, where you sit as a county sheriff in one of the most important counties in the state, what do you see in terms of crime over the last few years?
You're 100% accurate. It's just gotten horribly worse. We're very blessed here in Douglas County because our citizens take public safety very seriously. Doesn't matter what end of the political spectrum you're on. People want to live in a safe community. They want to have their kids go to safe schools. They want to operate a business without having the entire area crime-ridden. And in Douglas County, we understand what the quality of life matters to people. And a big part of that is fighting crime and being very overt about it.
Well, according to a U.S. News and World Report article that I was reading, it says Colorado. This is amazing, right? I mean, when you think Colorado, you're thinking, you know, beautiful Rocky Mountains, wilderness, and all that. But we've actually become the third most crime-ridden state in America. Here are some of the stats I saw. 5 in every 1,000 people experience violent crime. 3 in every 100 experience property crime. And the property crime rate has gone up 30% from 2019 to 2022. Is that consistent with what you're experiencing on the ground?
Not in my community, but I will tell you that in Colorado in general, yes, that is very consistent. Crime is actually down in my community because we're actually arresting criminal offenders. But I'm a Colorado native, and I grew up in Southeast Denver, and the Colorado that I grew up in is absolutely gone. It's just changed. A lot of that has to do with the policies down at the state capitol, the minimizing of criminal penalties. And just many members of our legislature don't want people incarcerated for committing crimes. There are some people that, hey, they've made a mistake in life, and they should get a second chance. But a lot of these folks are repeat offenders. And a lot of these folks that are committing crimes such as motor vehicle theft, robbery, any type of person crime where they're hurting people, these folks need to be incarcerated. There needs to be consequences for committing crimes. Our state legislature also went through the process of bail reform. And so even if you're a criminal and my deputy sheriff makes an arrest, it's very unlikely that individual is going to stay in jail. The only people that stay in my jail are typically the worst of the worst. But a lot of people are granted PR bonds on a regular basis. And if they're not granted a PR bond, they're given a pretty low bond, a shockingly low bond.
So can you dive into that in a little more detail, Sheriff, and just help us understand what has the legislature done in terms of reducing the penalties for criminal behavior?
In a lot of cases, they've reduced a lot of felonies to misdemeanors, various property crimes, some drug crimes. And so when you reduce penalties, you reduce consequences. When we all grew up, our parents taught us if you do make a decision and it's a bad decision, there's consequences for those decisions. Well, our state legislature, many of them, don't subscribe to that. And they don't believe in holding people accountable for their behavior, or they blame somebody else for their behavior, like society or even law enforcement. And it's just sad to see that we've evolved to that. I think our 2025 legislative session, it was so bad, and there's been so many bad bills that have passed that have now the Governor Polis is signing into law. I'm really hopeful that 2025 is the tipping point of when that pendulum is actually swinging the other way, because a lot of the nonsense that's happening at the state legislature, the average citizen that normally doesn't pay attention to what happens down there is paying attention because they think some of these bills are crazy.
Yeah, certainly they are, and I want to get into those. What's the mindset there in Denver? Let's talk about that just for a minute. It's not just Denver. Denver, as I said, Colorado's become deep blue. This progressive mindset, it seems like they want to blame external circumstances and they want to blame everybody except the person who did the thing that was wrong. Isn't America based on individual rights and individual responsibility?
100%, and I subscribe to that absolutely. But I wish I had an answer for you about that. I don't understand what has happened in our state that we've gone away from that. And it's really been over the last 15 years or so that one party has had the majority to control, the House, the Senate, and the governor's office. And so whenever that happens, and there's very little that conservative lawmakers can push back on, you're seeing the result of that throughout Colorado. You're seeing increased crime. You're seeing, I mentioned I grew up here in Colorado. You used to rarely see anything about shootings or stabbings, or it's in the daily news now. We're getting used to that. We're getting numb to that. We should never be numb to that. And that's the product of bad policies at the state capitol.
Well, let's give a few more statistics on this if we can. My research showed that in 2012, so that'd be 13 years ago, Colorado had 307 incidents of violent or property-related crimes per 100,000 people. So 307. That was 80 incidents below the national average. Now, in 2024, after all these woke and progressive policies, we have 492 incidents per 100,000, which is 112 incidents above the national average. This isn't just an accident, is it?
It is not. And it's a culmination of issues. It's a culmination of problems, not only issues at the state capitol, bad legislation, minimizing criminal penalties, and bail reform, letting hardened criminals back out on the street only to reoffend. It's also weak law enforcement leaders who are not willing to do what's needed to keep their community safe. And, politics has a lot to do with that. A lot of people are moving to Douglas County. And the reason that they're doing that is because it is a safe place to raise a family. They're tired of what they're seeing in the Denver metro area, the city of Aurora, and they're moving to Douglas County because it is safe. And law enforcement needs to be very overt about their crime-fighting efforts and to take a stand. Each agency has their own policies and procedures that dictate when you can take somebody to jail, pursuit policies, you name it. And in Douglas County, we work very closely with our police department partners to fight crime and make examples of these individuals. Many criminals have been captured on my deputies' body cams saying, I knew I shouldn't have come to Douglas County. And our response is, tell your friends, because we are very aggressive crime fighters. You may have seen a couple of weeks ago, the Denver City Council said that they were not going to renew their contract for flock safety license plate readers.
What? Tell us what that is before you finish your answer, if you would. I'm not familiar with that. The
flock safety license plate readers, they read license plates to tell if the plate's stolen, vehicle stolen, someone associated with that vehicle has an arrest warrant. They may be wanted. They may be somebody who has made suicidal threats, and they may, law enforcement may need to contact them. It's a major tool that law enforcement throughout the nation is using to catch criminal offenders. I've got them all over my county. My patrol cars are equipped with license plate readers. And there's people that are concerned about, privacy issues and things like that. Those license plate readers don't tell us who owns the vehicle. All it tells us is that plate or that vehicle is associated with X. And it's incumbent upon that deputy or police officer to drill down and figure out what the issue is. So if you were to drive by one of these license plate readers, it doesn't tell the license plate reader who you are, who's driving the vehicle, or who even the registered owner is. But this is a huge tool that law enforcement is utilizing across America to help keep their communities safe. It'll tell us if a sex offender goes near a school zone, things like that. If we have a homicide in my jurisdiction and we know the vehicle description, or better yet, if we know a plate, we can put that information into the system and it will tell us exactly where that vehicle goes. We've caught one murderer that way in my community by utilizing this technology. But here you have the city and county of Denver that does not want to use this technology because they're afraid it's going to be used to identify illegal immigrants in the city and county of Denver. It's absolutely absurd.
Well, so Sheriff, you mentioned law enforcement leadership not being willing to do what needs to be done to fight crime. Help us understand what's going on. That's kind of vague. So can you be any more specific?
The nice thing about being a sheriff is I answer to the people. I answer to the people that elected me. Doesn't matter what your party affiliation is, I answer to everyone. Police chiefs are typically appointed by mayor, city manager, city council. That's their boss. And so oftentimes a police chief might police their city the way that the mayor wants it policed, or the city council wants it policed. Priorities of those entities on how law enforcement should operate in that community. I don't answer to my county commissioners. I get along well with them. They're great people. But at the end of the day, I'm answerable to the voters and the citizens that elected me. And I've often said that if police chiefs were elected instead of appointed, the nation would be a safer place.
Oh, it definitely would be. Well, so you kind of alluded to a big issue, I think, and I want to just get your thoughts on it, Sheriff, and that is Colorado's status as a sanctuary state for illegal immigrants, illegal aliens. There are a number of laws, in fact, a whole series of laws passed in the last 10 years or so that have made Colorado as just about as inviting and comfortable a place as possible for illegal aliens. And you know, some of those include, for example, making state benefits available, driver's licenses, college tuition as if you were a state resident, unemployment benefits, Medicaid, and all sorts of other things. Not to mention the laws that tie the hands of law enforcement in terms of cooperating with immigration officials. Can you comment on the sanctuary laws and this whole agenda, and how has it affected crime in our state?
Well, currently we still can communicate with ICE, and that's a lot of that's something that people don't understand. As of today, right now, we can communicate with ICE. We can let ICE know who's in our facility. We can facilitate the transfer of somebody who has an immigration hold from ICE, and we can safely do that transfer so the inmate or the prisoner can go to ICE's custody. After Senate Bill 276, which was just signed by the governor, after that goes into effect, we're still working with our county attorney to determine how we can still communicate with ICE. Because when I read 276, it closes all those loopholes in previous laws that will now prohibit us from communicating. So just to be clear, these are people who are unlawfully in this country, who have committed crimes and have actually been arrested and are physically in our custody. And they're physically in our custody because they're a danger to the community. Once this law goes into effect, we can no longer tell ICE where these individuals are. We're still working through this because the inmates that I have in my custody, that's public information. That's public information. If you go to our website, dcsheriff.net, there's a button right at the top of the website. You can see exactly who's in my custody, the demographics of the individual in my custody, whether they're a citizen, non-citizen, and whether or not they have a hold through ICE currently in my jail. After July 1st, you won't be able to see that anymore because of the legislation passed and signed into law by Governor Polis. And again, we're still working with our county attorney to see if there's still anything that we can do. Because as the sheriff of this county, I don't want to release somebody back into the community because once they post bail or their sentence is done, I got to let them go. I can't hang on to them. And if the fact is that ICE doesn't even get to know whether they're still in my custody or not, that's a problem. And ICE also can't come to our courthouse. So the sheriff's office is connected to the courthouse. They can't come to the courthouse and take custody of these folks. So what's the objective here?
Sheriff, why can't they go to the courthouse?
It's against the law.
So the state of Colorado says it's against the law for federal immigration officials to be in a county courthouse?
Yes. For the purposes of taking somebody into custody who has an immigration hold. Yes, it is absolutely against the law. Not only inside the courthouse, they can't even be in the parking lot.
How is that one nation under God, Sheriff? I mean, America ought to be one nation, right? Not 50 nations. And shouldn't state laws be subordinate to federal laws? And shouldn't we cooperate?
There's going to be some litigation. I believe that the Trump administration is going to be filing lawsuits in regards to all of this. I know that federal funding is also at risk for the state of Colorado because of these policies that they put in place. And not only were they in place before, but they doubled down with 276. Yeah. So when Governor Polis says we're not a sanctuary state, when the mayor of Denver says, we're not a sanctuary city. Well, the state legislature just doubled down on all of this. Mm-hmm. And so you don't get to say that anymore. And so it's going to be interesting to see how all this unfolds with the litigation. It's going to have to get resolved in the courts. But in the meantime, I've got to follow Colorado law, because if I don't, it's a $50,000 fine.
So, yeah, talk about that, because that was part of 276, right?
That's correct. So if we violate 276, it's a $50,000 fine, not only potentially for me as the sheriff, as the CEO of the organization, but for any of my staff that either knowingly or unknowingly potentially violate this, they also get hit with a $50,000 fine. And so the legislators that wrote this bill, they knew exactly what they were doing. They wanted to put some teeth behind it. So it's incumbent upon the Trump administration, the DOJ, whomever, to fight this, and hopefully it gets in front of the Supreme Court, because it's tying the hands of law enforcement. And as a county sheriff, I don't have federal authority. I don't get to enforce federal law. My power is given to me by the state of Colorado and the Colorado Revised Statutes and the Constitution of the state of Colorado. But I don't have authority to enforce federal law.
Well, but Sheriff, what the Colorado legislature and liberal governor are saying now is it's not even enforcing federal law. You can't inform another branch of government, your federal branch. You can't inform ICE officers or anybody else that you have someone here who's guilty of violating federal law, immigration law, so that they can come and detain, arrest, or process that person to get a dangerous criminal off the streets.
That's the intent of 276, but we're going to try and work through that and figure out a way to do that. Because as I mentioned before, whoever is in my custody is public information. Mm-hmm. And so that's readily available online. ICE knows this. And so I believe they're checking our website daily to see who we have in custody. But to your point, there's no other state law that restricts my ability to communicate with federal law enforcement. I've got detectives that are assigned to FBI task forces, DEA, U.S. Marshals. And so this is just directed specifically at ICE and immigration status.
So in other words, the liberals in Denver want you to be more loyal to illegal immigrants than they do to the United States government.
Well, they're obviously not concerned about the citizens of Douglas County, and the illegal immigrants that we have in my custody are being released back out onto the street.
Sheriff, I know you're not involved in immigration work and stuff like that directly, but the liberal media seems to have painted this picture of ICE raids going into schools, going into churches, rounding up children and innocent people. To your knowledge, is that factual or not?
It is absolutely false. And not only is it false, it's never happened as far as I'm aware. It's never happened in Colorado. I've met with ICE, and they have told me we have zero interest in going into churches and schools. And so I think it's just fear mongering by members of either the legislature or people that want to instill fear in people, that this image of an ICE agent that's got the tactical gear on, coming into an elementary school and grabbing a kid. It hasn't happened. It's not going to happen. They've told me they have no interest in that, nor did I think they would have interest in that. Right now, they're looking for low-hanging fruit. And what is that? That's people who are illegally in this country that are committing crimes against American citizens and American communities. That's what they're going after.
Mm-hmm. Well, and right here in Colorado, we've had some stuff in the news on this. The apartment complex in Aurora that was taken over by the Venezuelan gang. And then just a few weeks ago, we had the raid at a nightclub in Colorado Springs where there were 100 and something illegal aliens taken into custody. There was prostitution and drug use going on at this sort of off-the-books nightclub. This is a real problem, isn't it?
It is, and my agency did help out with that raid. There was a lot of, as you mentioned, there was a huge criminal nexus to that, which is why we were allowed to participate in that. So I sent our Bearcat down there, which is an armored SWAT vehicle. I sent our Rook, which is another type of armored vehicle that we use, and then I sent personnel to assist with that. And so, but there was, like you said, there was drug dealing, prostitution. There was believed to be a nexus with international gangs that was also there as well. So I'm more than willing, because anything that I can do to help get individuals like that in custody keeps my community safe, because they're just to the south of us.
Well, and so Sheriff, this nexus you're kind of referring to now, millions of illegals have been allowed into America through the open border policies of the last administration and some beyond that. And most of the people that come to America illegally are probably just looking for a better life. My view is you come illegally, you are then by definition a lawbreaker. But people who are a threat to the safety of others, not all of them are directly so, but having that kind of an approach to the subject of illegal immigration, does it allow in and foster other criminal elements besides just people who are looking for a better way of life? Does it allow in other stuff, drug dealing and sex trafficking and the like?
It allows for all of that. So the Biden-Harris administration, when they opened our borders, they subjected American citizens to all kinds of dangers. You had human trafficking, you had drug trafficking, you had criminals that were released from prisons in Venezuela making their way through our southern border. And honestly, I'm also concerned, and I spoke about this when I spoke at the Trump rally in Aurora, Colorado back in October. We have no idea to this day if an international terrorist who wants to kill Americans are already inside this country right now because of the open border policies of the Biden-Harris administration. Thank God we have a DOJ right now that is trying to track these individuals down. And so I know the FBI, DEA, all these other federal law enforcement agencies, they've become immigration agents as well, based upon what the Trump administration is demanding and what the voters demanded in November, is to make this country safe again.
Yeah, well, thank God we have, no pun intended, a new sheriff in town, at least in Washington. So that's awesome. But we just a couple weeks ago, I think there was the anniversary of the death of George Floyd, and you remember that whole incident, Sheriff, and there was massive demonstrations and just an entire national uproar over the incident and the things which followed. Across America, city councils, state legislatures in a lot of different places started adopting policies and passing laws along the lines of the defund police mantra. Even here in Colorado, there were some laws passed that were designed to, as the liberals would say, hold the police accountable. So do you remember any of those laws? And now that we're about 2 to 3 years past that point, maybe 4 or 5, clock's ticking on me here, how are those still a major burden for your staff and for police and others? And how are we faring under that?
I got to be honest with you. The big one for Colorado was Senate Bill 217. We haven't had much of an issue with that. We're compliant with the law. Good agencies with good leadership, they don't have an issue with police accountability. And I don't either. Cops should absolutely be held accountable. The amount of authority that we have to do our jobs, that's built on trust. And you have to be able to trust your law enforcement. But the mandate for body cams and the mandatory reporting, things like that, honestly, it really has not affected us. What has the agencies that I say or individuals that it has affected are the people that were not doing the job the right way. So if that makes sense. So yeah. It wasn't much of a burden for us in my agency, where we already had body cams in place. We're already doing mandatory reporting. We do thorough use of force investigations. So it really didn't hit us the way it might have hit some other agencies. We were already pretty much advanced in that area in my agency, and so it wasn't a problem.
And they also eliminated individual immunity for police officers. And how has that worked out? Is that it seemed like there was some concern at the time that exposing law enforcement officers to civil lawsuits could just, be an incentive for them not to want to serve anymore. Has that had an impact on your ability to recruit good officers?
I would say it's maybe changed a few things. There's nothing really tangible that I can tell you. We did have a lot of people statewide leave the profession because they were concerned about that. To my knowledge, I don't know of an agency or an individual with an agency that has had to actually pay out for that. Law enforcement was always liable. So if I had an employee that was outside the scope of their job, they were violating policy, they were violating state law, and they were just willfully violating somebody's rights or physically assaulting and abusing them, there was always liability there. That's nothing new. They just decided to put it in the statute. We have not seen an impact with that with my particular agency. And again, I don't know of any individual law enforcement officer or any agency that has had to pay out. And the key is to making sure that your house is clean and you don't hire people like that. I do agree with the mandatory reporting for the Peace Officers of Standards Board for Colorado, that if you're a lying law enforcement officer, you're fired, and you should be. And now once you fire a bad cop for lying, they end up on, it's called the Post Board for making false statements. I 100% agree with that, because some of these cops were going from agency to agency, especially in times when it's hard to find people that want to be cops anymore. And so that's another thing that Senate Bill 217 cleaned up, which is, it's probably a good thing.
Well, look, some of the other things that might be contributing to Colorado's crime problem, how do you feel about, now this is old news now, right? Colorado got a national reputation, Rocky Mountain High, all this, one of the first states to legalize marijuana. And how has that impacted public safety in our state?
From my perspective, it has brought in a lot of people from out of the state that would normally be here. I know when the legalization first happened, a lot of people came to Colorado. I think they were going to cultivate their own marijuana, and they were going to be rich, and just from my perspective, that's when I saw Colorado really take a downturn. And when crime started increasing with the minimizing of penalties, there was just a much larger drug influence. We don't have a lot of problems per se, my deputies out on the street, with people using marijuana and getting fights with my deputies and things like that. But we have seen an increase in just a different kind of element, if that makes sense, that we're encountering. We're just encountering that much more often.
Well, I had another law enforcement officer here in Colorado tell me that it actually facilitates, it really gets down to money in a sense. And being able to make a lot of money off marijuana in Colorado invites cartel activity and even more dangerous drugs, which follow right along with that. Is that pretty true, do you think?
100%. 100%. So we are involved with a lot of various federal task forces, and we are aware of cartels operating within the state of Colorado. We've made it easy for them to operate in the state of Colorado. And, we're doing what we can to fight that element. But that's why I have detectives and those types of task forces. And so whenever you're soft on crime, you're soft on drugs, you're soft on penalties, bad things are going to happen to your community.
Yeah, it's not rocket science, is it? In a sense.
No, it's not. It's not. And then people are like, well, how did we get to this place? Well, just look at what we've done over the last 13 years to minimize accountability with these individuals. People make mistakes. I get that, right? People make mistakes. They may go to jail. They may go to prison. They pay their debt to society. But when there's no jail or there's no prison, they're just released back out to the street. There's really no consequences for your behavior.
Well, and do you think the marijuana legalization of it in Colorado has contributed to the homeless population?
I do. I think that's part of it. I think that's definitely part of it. And I think the enabling of our homeless population is also an issue. If you come into my county, you won't see homeless people on every corner. We have the Homeless Engagement Assistance Resource Team, which we pair a deputy sheriff with a homeless navigator. What's a homeless navigator? It's a civilian who is an expert in connecting these folks with services. We're all about that. But 90% of the people that we contact that are homeless, they don't want help. They just want to be left alone. Well, if they come into my county, they're going to be contacted by law enforcement. And so they don't want to be contacted by law enforcement. A lot of these folks, they have warrants for their arrest. They may have drugs on them. They may have mental health issues, whatever it is. Again, I want to emphasize, we can help them if they need help. But if they're committing crimes, we're going to enforce the law. There's a lot of entities that our Homeless Engagement Assistance Resource Team works with to get these folks housing, to get them jobs, and to help them get on their feet, right? That's a good thing. And that's something that we absolutely want to be a part of. But as I mentioned before, a lot of these folks don't want help. They're drug addicts, they're alcoholics, and they want to continue the lifestyle that they have. If they're incarcerated or they're in a facility that doesn't allow that sort of thing, they can't use their drugs, they can't get drunk. And so a lot of them don't want that. So for communities like Denver who have enabled this behavior and are not enforcing any type of camping ban, you're gonna get what's happened in the city of Denver. You're gonna get large encampments that are across the street from our state capitol. You're gonna get communities that are overrun by this problem. Nobody wants their kids having to go to walk to the bus stop or walk to school and have to walk around a homeless encampment. And so again, that's why my community is different. We don't tolerate that. Zero tolerance. If somebody's trying to set up a tent, we're sending a deputy sheriff to stop it. And again, we're not trying to arrest our way out of this problem. We'll help folks that need to be helped. But if they don't want help and they're breaking the law, there's consequences for that.
So educate me a little bit more, Sheriff. Are there ordinances, county ordinances, city ordinances in place against setting up a campsite on the side of the road?
Both. And so the cities like Parker, Lone Tree, Castle Rock, they've got their own city ordinances, and we have a county ordinance as well that you can't set up a tent or an encampment, in a public right of way. And we enforce private property camping ban as well. So let's say we have a strip mall that's owned by a company that's out of state. We will contact that corporation and say, look, we don't tolerate this in this community, and we're asking you for a trespass letter to ensure that, your businesses that are paying to be in the strip mall or wherever, that they're not plagued with these individuals panhandling on private property. And so we've had a lot of success with that. And these businesses are complying because they don't want it either. A couple years ago, we had an individual that was homeless in the town of Castle Rock, and the individual was behind a pizza establishment, and he was hanging out behind there. He ended up stabbing a young man to death behind that establishment. And so these businesses realize they don't want this element around there. This is something, again, that has occurred in Colorado over the last decade or so. This is new for us, but it's a problem that's fixable. Stop enabling the behavior.
Well, so maybe you can dive in a little bit more on the resources that you're able to bring to bear to help people who want help, because someone could take this mindset and say, "Oh, isn't that harsh? You're being cruel. You're just trying to run people off who are in need, disabled, drug addicts. We gotta let them, know that they are at home and safe in our community." But there's actually a balance here. And can you share a little bit more? What kind of resources is it that you can bring to those who want help?
Well, first of all, to your point, I think the heartless thing to do would be to leave that individual on the side of the road and allow them to continue to dwell in their drug problem, alcohol problem, mental health problem, or whatever. But what we do is take that approach. We carefully select the deputies that are involved because we want deputies that that can build a rapport with these homeless folks, that the homeless individuals don't feel threatened by the deputy sheriff standing there. And then we pair them with that homeless navigator who's a civilian that is an expert at connecting them to various nonprofits around Colorado that are willing to help these folks get on their feet. It might be housing, it might be money, it might be getting them a job. But with all of these nonprofits, there's one condition: you can't use while you're in their programs. And if you have to be looking for a job. And so again, we want to help them. It's easy to help people that want to be helped. There's plenty of resources out there. There's a lot of people with big hearts that have started these nonprofits, and it's easy to connect these folks, connecting them with churches that want to help them. And a lot of churches in our area, they want to help these folks. They want to provide food. They want to provide housing or what have you. But a lot of these folks, they just simply don't want the help.
Right.
And in my community, if they know they're going to get contacted by law enforcement, they typically don't come into our community.
Sheriff, a couple more subjects I want to cover with you in the couple minutes we have left here. One of them is gun control. So Colorado, the liberals have also been very aggressive at trying to pass new gun control measures, limiting the rights of Coloradans to own various firearms. For example, one of the bills that just passed the legislature requires a permit and training for anybody that has a semi-automatic rifle with a magazine to it. One of the most aggressive gun laws I've seen. But there are others, like red flag laws and many others that they've gotten on the books now in this state. Do you think these laws are making it safer in Colorado for the average citizen, or are they infringing on the ability of Coloradans to defend themselves and enjoy firearm-related sports?
I think it's an absolute infringement. Senate Bill 3, which you just referred to, essentially you have to buy back your gun rights. And, I'm all in favor, if you're mentally ill and you want to kill people, that's a no-brainer. You shouldn't have a firearm. But the fact of the matter is Senate Bill 3 is so ambiguous in the way that it's written, and we're still trying to assess how many staff we have to hire because the state legislature, they have no idea. The way the law is written, it talks about gases that cycle the action on the firearm. So the way that Senate Bill 3 is written, if the gas is expelled from the expended round causes the action to slide and for another round to be loaded in, that's the threshold for people to have to get the special permit before they can buy it. Well, when you talk to a legislator, like, oh, that doesn't account regular semi-automatic weapons. Well, how doesn't it? Because that's exactly how a semi-automatic weapon works. Right. So it's going to be interesting to see how this works. I've heard of even gun stores in the Douglas County area. They're done, and they're planning on moving their business elsewhere. So it remains to be seen how this is going to look and the effect that it's going to have on sheriff's offices all over the state of Colorado. And I know for a fact, because I'm on the County Sheriffs of Colorado Legislative Committee, if the county sheriffs of Colorado would have taken a neutral stance on this, they would have taken the sheriffs out of the bill. Because I was on the phone call in the Zoom meeting where that was discussed. And I told them at the Zoom meeting, there's absolutely nothing that you're going to say or do to get me to go to a neutral stance on this. So let's vote. And a bunch of other sheriffs joined me as well. So we took an opposed position on this bill. And guess what? The sheriffs remained in that bill. So our citizens of our counties are going to have to pay, because I'm going to have to add staff to vet and get these permits out to these individuals that are buying these firearms. And again, to my point, I don't know how many we're going to have to divvy out, because if it's every single semi-automatic firearm for any of my citizens that wants to buy a gun, that's a lot.
Real quick, Sheriff, are these laws going to make us safer as a state, or not, do you think?
Well, I can tell you this. The thug that wants to hurt people and rob people, they're not getting a permit. They don't care. They're laughing at these gun laws. Yeah. The only thing that this affects is law-abiding citizens. Because it could be people that break the law, they're going to continue to break the law. So my answer to you is no. It's going to have absolutely zero effect. And those people that are hell-bent on hurting themselves or hurting other people, they're not going to go get a permit either. They're going to go get a gun off the black market.
Yeah, and I think the data proves this point. It's time for some common sense in Denver. Sheriff Darren Weakley, thank you so much for joining us on Truth and Liberty today, sir. It's been just really informative and a pleasure to have you on the show.
Thanks for having me.
All right, folks, so don't forget our free product offer today. It's my booklet called Faith for America, which traces the history of America in some pivotal moments and how faith has always carried us through as a people. The times we're going through now, they're not even as bad as some of the stuff we've been through before. And God is faithful, and He's gonna prosper our nation. Get a copy of that today at no charge by going to our website at truthandlibertygtn.com. Share your email with us, and we'll get that right out to you. And again, remember, Truth and Liberty on GTN airs live every Wednesday and Friday at 6 p.m. And you can catch it live or the archive shows on our website at truthandliberty.net. God bless you all, and thanks for watching.